All right, so we're getting out to the airplane. Open up the binder. The first thing in the checklist tells you to go ahead and check for our annual, our VOR test, all those inspections that have been completed per Part 43. And right in the beginning of the binder, the first page will tell you that all of those inspections, our annual, our VOR test, our 100-hour, our altimeter, pitot-static system, transponder, and ELT are all within dates. You're just checking to make sure all are within. And then you can double check also with the endorsements in the back to make sure, because we have copies of those, to make sure they're all within limits. All right, so after we have checked all the documents inside the binder, we'll go ahead and do some external things. First things first, we'll remove the pitot cover from the left wing, underneath the left wing. Okay.
All right, so we just removed the pitot cover from underneath the left wing.
Yep, on the pitot mast, and then we'll come over here and remove the chocks underneath the nose gear. Okay, and then it also instructs us to visually check the fuel supply and note the quantity. So you will check that in the fuel tanks on both sides. So right here, we can see that it's not quite full, but it is at the tabs. So that means we have at least 17 gallons in our tank. The other side, and visually check, we have just about 17 as well. It's at the tabs. Right, next is to unlock the door and then go ahead and load the aircraft. So always step using this handle, only one person at a time, and stay on the black tape. Then you go ahead and unlock the door. All right, and then first you start with the upper lock and then this lock. Always remember that this lock on top is weaker than this one, so never let all of the weight of the door depend on just this upper lock and you'll be good. Then we come in and we'll make sure that all seat belts that aren't going to be used for the flight are fastened. Okay, you could go. All right, and then we'll go ahead and unfasten this, our gust lock. That the seatbelt acts as our gust lock around the controls. As long as it's not too windy, we can go ahead and unlock that early. If it is windy conditions, we'll go ahead and leave that locked. All right, so it instructs us to go ahead and check for all of our documents on board, our aero documents, if you will. So first things first, airworthiness usually will be located up here on top, like kind of taped to the ceiling, or it will be located in the baggage compartment, taped to the back. And then the registration certificate is also up there. Then we will have our POH, which is located in this ASA bag in the back. Inside the bag, you want to check that we have our POH, which is right here, the black one. We have our Aspen Evolution Backup Display Guide, which is right here. And then we have the skinnier book, the Garmin reference guide, but then sometimes we also have the thicker Garmin book in board, but we do need at least these three, the two skinny books and the POH on board and within reach of the pilot. All right, so in the cockpit, you can go ahead and set your park and brake if you would like. You go ahead and pull it up there and press to engage that brake. Make sure that all instrument and panel overhead switches are off, they are all in the off position right here. Mixture is idle cutoff. Left and right magneto switches are off and those are protected. Then we'll go ahead and turn on our battery switch. Okay, battery master. And then we'll go ahead and verify that our pitot heat as well as all of our lights are operational. So landing, nav, strobes, and pitot heat, and we'll exit the aircraft. We're gonna make sure that our fin strobe is working up there on top. All right, good. And then we're gonna come around, check that our strobes, if you don't want to look straight at the strobes, go ahead and cover them up. And then we'll check that our right nav is working. Bring it around to the left side. And again, checking our landing light and checking our strobes, make sure it's not going to shine in your eyes. And then our right nav or left nav is working. Then come underneath and check that pitot heat, that pitot mask, carefully just touch it, make sure it's heating up. It's definitely heating up. And then lastly, our stall, make sure it's engaging. Yep, and you listen for it in the G1000 in the cockpit. Alright, so now we're back in the cockpit. You want to make sure that you don't leave the pitot heat on for more than 3 minutes on the ground, so we'll go ahead and turn that off. There is going to be a warning cast message that comes on. Make sure that does come on the ground, okay? Then we'll go ahead and turn off our lights. We don't need to leave those on anymore. However, we'll go ahead and leave the battery master on for now. We'll check that our fuel quantity indications are showing pretty much what we saw outside. Now, we only were able to see that it was above 17, which that in both tanks it does reflect accurately. We will also go ahead and verify, well, we already verified operation of all the exterior lighting as well as the pitot tube. Like I said, you want to be quick in that, so when you turn them all on, run out, go check them, come back in and turn them all off. Okay, again in the cockpit, after you're done checking all those indications, we'll go ahead and turn off our battery master. Then we're going to go ahead and check some flight controls. We'll go ahead and put the flaps up when we want to go ahead and check them externally. So to put the flaps fully down into the full 40 degrees of flaps, we will go ahead and pull it up 3 notches. Then we want to go ahead and test the primary flight controls, making sure they're looking like they're operating properly. And then we want to make sure that our stabilator and runner trim are neutral. So right here, this is the stabilator trim. Make sure that is in the neutral position. And then you want to go ahead and make sure the rudder trim is in the neutral position, that it matches up with that middle line right there. You can go ahead and make sure that the windows are checked for cleanliness. Go to make sure they're wiped down, any bugs or anything like that. Normally there will be spray and a rag in the back in the baggage compartment. And then afterwards, after we're done with the tow bar and all that, we'll go ahead and secure the baggage door. So here we'll go ahead and unlock the baggage door. Go ahead and open this up. Now we have this little device that will keep the door open for us. Here is usually where we will keep the fuel sump, so we can go ahead and sump for each tank and the fuel strainer for the fuel to make sure we don't have any sediments or the right fuel in our tanks. Okay, so we already checked for the fuel quantity in the tanks and on the G1000 visually. Then our fuel sumps are under each wing by the gear. Go ahead and lift this up, drain out enough fuel to go ahead and inspect it properly. Okay, bringing it up. We know it's 100 low lead avgas because it is blue in color, and we're checking for any sediments, water, anything like that that may have gotten into our fuel, but looks like we are all clear. Then you can go ahead and open the tank back up and dump it through the vents into the tank, so we don't waste any fuel or dump it on the ground or anything like that. Now we go ahead and do the same thing on the left tank. Sump from the bottom. Make sure you're not wiggling it around too much as to lock the fuel drain. Don't want that. Bring it out, check for clarity. It looks all good. And we'll dump it back in the tank. But we will also, while on this side of the aircraft, we'll check the fuel strainer. Set that back on there. And it's over here on the front, the left side of the cowl. And we'll go ahead. This one's a little awkward, but you just have to be careful with it. Press. And check for the fuel, and it looks all clear. We could dump that back in the left tank as well. Alright, after ensuring that both fuel caps are secured back in their position, you can go ahead and put this back in the baggage compartment. And then we'll go ahead and begin to check all of our flight controls, that everything looks to be fully operational and it feels to be fully operational. We're over at the right wing. We'll start this way and work our way around the whole aircraft. First, of course, you want to inspect the whole wing, the surface for its condition, and just make sure there's no, abnormalities like any dents or screws missing, rivets missing, or anything like that. Then you'll go ahead and check the hinges on the flaps. So you'll start over here and just give it a little wiggle. Make sure it should be about that loose, but everything looks like it's in its place. You can move the flap a little bit and just make sure everything seems to be operational and in its place. And then we'll come over to the aileron and check the hinges on that, as well as the movement of it. You want to move it about the rivet row, so always move it right here. Make sure it's functioning properly. Then you'll come underneath the aileron and you'll check the hinge in here, give it the same little wiggle right there. And then along the aileron, you can check the screws down here all the way around through the end. And check the screws on the outboard of the aileron as well. So back underneath here. And make sure the bondage is still here, the bondage strap right here. And nothing looks to be missing or broken. Another thing to be looking for on the outside of the control surfaces are the static wicks. Make sure, don't like tug on them or anything like that. Just make sure they're secure and the bolts are in place. Same with that one over there. On the other end, you want to make sure it's secure. Just feel underneath. Same with on the flap. Alright, coming around the wing, you want to check that our light doesn't have any like cracks or anything in it, within the light bulb itself and on the external piece of it as well. Come around the edge, make sure the wingtip is all nice, smooth, no obstructions or dents. Same with the leading edge of the wing. Make sure the stall strips looks normal and everything looks good. Our fresh air inlet, everything is clear and free of any obstructions or dents or anything like that. Then we'll bring it down as the checklist instructs us. We can make sure that our main gear on our right side looks all clear. In this, you're checking that our strut is at least 4.5 inches plus or minus 0.25 inches. That's the tolerance for it. Making sure our brake line looks good, the tread on the tires looks good, our disc brakes looks all good, and everything in there looks normal. We won't be able to see the cotter pin or anything like that inside, but because of the hubcap covering it, but maintenance goes ahead and checks that for us. And around to the nose, you're gonna, same thing, check the surface for its condition, check that each screw is in its place, nothing's missing, and check that no dents or anything is on the cowling or anything like that. You can check the windshield, that everything is looking good there. Here you can also check the oil. So right here, we're going to open the oil cap. Then you can go ahead and spin off the dipstick and check that we have enough oil on board. It's showing that we have about 6.5 there. Now CBU policy requires us to have 7, so we would add at least half a quart there. But between 6 and 8, you should be in safe condition. Just policy requires us to have 7, just in case. Make sure we're always in safe condition for flight. Then we could go ahead and close the door, make sure that's all shut. Bringing it around to the front, checking out our propeller and our spinner. You want to start with the leading edge and bring it all the way around, checking for any nicks or anything like that, making sure everything feels all good around the whole prop. Make sure our spinner is all good. Don't push or tug on it too much. Just make sure you're inspecting all the screws are in its place. You can even check our intakes, make sure nothing is, no bird's nests or any beehives or anything like that are in there. You can check inside there. Then you want to go ahead and bring it down to our nose gear. Same thing, kind of like the main gear. You want to check that the tire is looking all good, the tread's good, which it looks great. Our strut on the nose has a little less of a tolerance. Well, the tolerance is still 0.25 of an inch, but it's 3.25 inches that you're looking for. So about, there we go. We have plenty of strut showing on that one. Also want to make sure you're checking all the air inlets as well when you're checking the intakes, that those are clear of any bird's nests or anything like that, and beehives and all that stuff. Bringing it around to the left wing, we're doing essentially the same exact thing we did on the right wing. So to just start on the leading edge, our fresh air inlet looks clear. Then we're going to continue examining the leading edge of the airplane. Stall strips looks good. Our stall warning horn, make sure that's like nothing is covering it or anything or keeping it in the up position or anything like that. We can't, there's even a placard on here that says do not paint over it or anything like that, so we won't mess with that. Just make sure it's working when we turn on the battery, which we did earlier. So we'll check the leading edge, make sure that's all good as well. Now before we move on our left wing, we also have an outside air temperature probe. Now, let me find that right here. So we want to make sure that's all good. That's not like hanging off or anything like that. We want to make sure it looks suitable for flight. We also have our pitot mast on this side as opposed to our right side. You want to make sure there's no bugs in it or anything like that. inlets. Same with our left wing, we also have our fuel vent here. Make sure that's free of any bugs or water or frost or anything like that. Here we have our jack points, so we don't have to worry about that. That's for maintenance, for us to jack up the airplanes when we're inspecting them. And before we move on over to the back side of the wing, we'll cover the gear again. And same as the left, or the right side, you want to check the tire, the tread, the struts, the brake line, and all that good stuff. Make sure our gear is in good shape for flight. We're gonna go ahead and bring it around to the back of the wing, checking the wing tips, making sure the light's all free of any cracks or anything like that. And bringing it around to the aileron. Again, checking the static wicks. Don't tug on them, just check that the bolts are in place. You can go ahead and move the aileron, check that all the hinges, the straps, the bondage straps, and the screws are all in place as well. Bringing it all the way down the line, and you want to hold the aileron up so that it doesn't smash your fingers when you're inspecting the hinge. So always hold one hand on the aileron so that the wind doesn't accidentally push onto your fingers. Checking all the way down, and the hinge right there, and the screws. Now for the flap on the left side, same thing, you're just checking, just give it a little tug, make sure there's no, that the spring is holding it in place. It shouldn't be like moving, wiggling freely. We check that our static wick's all good and our hinge over here inboard moves correctly. All right, now we're gonna check the rear of the airplane, checking that everything is free of any dents or obstructions or anything's missing, like our rivets, our screws, all that good stuff. Our inlets here are free. I call them gills, but because they kind of remind me of gills, but make sure those are free of any like bugs or anything like that. Bringing it around to the rest of the empennage, you want to check that this is our stabilator, and you want to check it open palm. So you have an open palm here, and you just freely move it carefully, just check the operation of it. And then your trim tab should be moving in the same direction, and it is, so we're good there. And bringing it around to the back of the stabilator, you're making sure all your static wicks are in place. Same on your rudder. Now with this one, we won't be moving this control surface. You just want to make sure everything looks in its place, and there's even a placard right there saying you do not push that, so don't push it. And we have the static wicks all placed in their correct place, and it's bolted down. I want to check that this all looks good in this assembly down here, and everything, all the bolts are there, nothing's missing. And we have the static wick here, it's in its place, and then we want to go ahead and check the stabilator just one more time, making sure everything's checking correctly. Yep. All right, bringing it into the other side of the empennage, we check that our ELT, which is located behind here, all the screws are in place. Now these are plastic screws, easily unscrewable, but we want to make sure they're in their place. We also want to make sure all of our antennas are in place, our VOR antennas. ELT here is good. Our COM1 antenna looks like it's in its place. We have COM2 underneath here, it's that gray one over there. It's way underneath there. And then something you might not be able to see on top, we have our Garmin, our GPS ones up there. And then in the front, we also have a fin-shaped transponder antenna and glide slope antenna. So we have our external power source right here. This is when you can essentially jump start your airplane in case the battery is dead, just like you would your car. This is where you would do that. And we usually consult maintenance for that here at CBU though. And then that resumes the rest of your pre-flight. You'll go ahead and finish up with locking our baggage door before we taxi out for takeoff. And when you're inside, you'll go ahead and lock up the cabin door.